Now let's discuss this further with Annelle Sheline, who's a research fellow in the Middle East program at the Quincy Institute and formerly served as a U.S. State Department official. She's joining us from Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us on Al Jazeera. Israeli officials have explicitly tied this plan that the defense minister detailed to the so-called Trump plan for Gaza. Will the U.S. be on board with this? How much influence does Washington have over the details of this plan, you think?
Washington has significant influence over the details, although we did see Trump demur when asked if he would support the involuntary transfer of Palestinians out of Gaza, saying that people should look to Netanyahu for that. This, to go back to what the earlier esteemed guest was saying, not only is Israel engaged in horrific crimes and violations of international law, but by extension, so is the United States, including, for example, American mercenaries that are involved in the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Fund. There have been whistleblowers reporting that these individuals, Americans, are firing upon Palestinians seeking aid. So to be clear, it is not only the Israeli government and members of the Israeli military engaged in these crimes, but Americans as well. And unfortunately, Trump has demonstrated his complete disregard for international law and seems fully committed to this plan moving forward to move Palestinians into concentration camps and then to move them somewhere else.
So do you believe, first, just coming back to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the notorious Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, where tens of Palestinians, hundreds of Palestinians, I should say, have been killed at their food distribution sites. Do you think the GHF, which is an Israeli-backed U.S. plan, is laying the groundwork for this plan to take effect, the forcible displacement of Palestinians from Gaza?
Yes, they've been clear about that. In contrast to UNRWA, which had hundreds of distribution sites across Gaza, which allowed people to gain food and assistance much more easily from where they were and where they needed it, the GHF has only 4 distribution sites. And as you said, hundreds of people have been killed, fired upon, trying to gain aid. And the U.S. is completely supporting this effort to not only murder Palestinians seeking aid, but to move Palestinians into these smaller and smaller areas, which, as was pointed out, the Israeli minister, has said are intended to facilitate this involuntary transfer of Palestinians elsewhere.
Annelle, you resigned from the State Department because of the U.S. policies in Gaza, which you disagree with. Are they dissenting voices in Washington right now that are telling the Trump administration that this plan, the GHF, is illegal under international law? Are they dissenting voices that are loud enough that could make the administration rethink some of these policies?
I can't speak to who inside the Trump administration may be speaking out against this, but I very much doubt it. We know that the people Trump surrounds him with tend to be sycophants, tend to be people who tell him what he likes to hear. We know that Netanyahu came to Washington with a letter nominating Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize, which Trump has long expressed the belief that he deserves. So, no, I don't anticipate that there are many people in Trump's orbit that are telling him that not only would this be a horrific crime against humanity to not only facilitate genocide, but then transfer the surviving members of the population outside of their land. But this does implicate the United States. And coming up, there is going to be a meeting of the Hague Group in Bogota, Colombia, next week, where a coalition of countries, mostly from the global south, are meeting to impose consequences on Israel and to circumvent the U.S. veto at the UN Security Council. So similar to how the international community mobilized to impose pressure on apartheid South Africa, we are finally seeing other countries who have long called out Israel's actions, but many have not taken concrete measures to sanction Israel, to impose consequences, because we know the United States isn't going to. But the rest of the world can come together, including countries in the Middle East, in the global south, to tell Israel this is unacceptable and the international community will no longer allow you to violate international law with this degree of impunity.
Right. And in immediate what we have right now is these negotiations, indirect negotiations for a ceasefire, a temporary one, which the US president seems upbeat about. He says there could be a deal this week. A lot is riding on that. But again, many questions about the effectiveness of this when there isn't a more permanent plan. Does the US, does this administration have that in mind, a permanent plan, or do they just want to make this go away?
I think Trump does just want to make this go away. I could foresee an outcome where Netanyahu agrees to some kind of temporary ceasefire because Trump is supporting his ultimate plan to transfer Palestinians out of Gaza, which a plan which I imagine would then be replicated in the West Bank as well. We are unlikely to see such a ceasefire emerge without some kind of shift from Hamas, because Hamas has long maintained that they're not interested in a temporary truce. They want an actual end to the war. They want aid to get into Gaza. But we know that Trump has said there will be significant consequences. We know that officials are meeting in Doha. And given that Israel has blocked actual aid, including everything from baby formula to water to fuel, from entering Gaza since March 2nd, and instead only allowing this sort of nominal PR campaign of these boxes of expired food from the Gaza Humanitarian Fund to get in, that the pressure is such Hamas may be forced to agree to simply a temporary ceasefire because they are unable to continue under these conditions of genocide.
Thank you so much for talking to us about this. Very interesting to hear your views. Annelle Sheline, Research Fellow at the Quincy Institute, joining us there from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.